Fearing the worst, the colonel sent for the Mahout, but before the order could be carried out, a crowd of Mahouts, that is, elephant drivers, and other natives were seen approaching, shouting, pagle ho gaya, meaning, he has gone mad, he has gone mad. Yes, sure enough, there was Dot Campus Mahout, inanely grinning and shaking his hands. Now and again he would stop and look behind, and a look of terror would come into his eyes. He would crouch down and put his hands to his ears as if to shut out some dreadful sound. He would remain like this for a minute or two, glance furtively around, and then, as if reassured, would get up and smile and shake his hands. It was plainly not liquor that made him behave in this manner. The poor fellow had actually become an imbecile through fear. It was hopeless attempting to get any information from such an object. So, handing him over to the care of the medical officer, a search party mounted on elephants was at once organized and sent off in the direction of Frizerpet, 24 miles distant, where Dee's camp was. When they got about halfway, they were met by a native forest ranger who asked them to stop and come back with him to a country cart that followed, in which were the dead bodies of the two unfortunate officers of whom they were in search. On coming up with the cart and examining its contents, a most gruesome sight met their eyes. There, rolled up in a native kambali, that is, a blanket, was an indistinguishable mass of human flesh, mud, and clothing. Crushed out of all shape, the bodies were inextricably mixed together, puddled into one mass by the great feet of the musked elephant. None dared touch the shapeless heap, were not, but the boot covered feet were distinguishable, to show that two human beings lay there. A deep gloom fell on all, natives and Europeans alike. None dared speak above a whisper, and in silence the search party turned back, taking with them what was once two gallant young officers, but now an object that made anyone shudder to look at. The forest ranger's story was soon told. He had been an eyewitness of the tragic occurrence. Here it is. The officers arrived 2 days ago at Periyapatna, a large village halfway to Frizerpet, and while camped there, a native brought in information of a bullock having been killed at his village some 4 miles off. The sahibs determined to sit up in a machan over the kill and go for the tiger when he returned to his mill. They left their camp followers and baggage at Periyapatna and accompanied only by himself, that is the ranger, and the native who brought the information, they rode out on Dot Campa, took their places on the Machan, and sent the Mahout back with the elephant with orders for him to come back at dawn next day to take them back to camp. The tiger did not turn up that night, and the whole party were on their way back to Periyapatna in the early dawn when suddenly Dot Campa stopped and, striking the ground with the end of his trunk, made that peculiar drumming noise which is the usual signal of alarm with these animals when they sense tiger or other danger. It was still early morning, so that They could barely see any object in the shadow of the forest trees. The elephant now began to back, curl away his trunk, and sway his head from side to side. The Mahout said he was about to charge, and that there must be another elephant in the path. They could barely keep their seats on the pad. So violent was the motion caused by the elephant, backing and swaying from side to side. The officers had to hold on tight by the ropes so that they could not use their guns. When there, in the distance, only 50 yards off, they saw an enormous elephant coming towards them. There was no doubt that it was the rogue from its great size. It had not seen them yet, as elephants see very badly. But Dot Kampa had scented him out, as the wind was in their favor. The Sahibs urged the Mahout to keep his elephant quiet so that they might use their guns, but it was no use, for although he cruelly beat the beast about the head with his iron goad, yet it continued to back and sway. The rogue had now got within 30 yards when it perceived them and stopped. It backed a few paces and, with ears thrown forward, uttered trumpet after trumpet and then came full charge down on them. No sooner did Dotkampa hear the trumpeting than he turned round and bolted off into the forest, crashing through the brushwood and under the branches of the large trees, the musked elephant in hot pursuit. Suddenly, an overhanging branch caught in the side of the pad, ripped it clean off the elephant's back, and threw the two officers on the ground. The forest officer managed to seize the branch and clambered up out of harm's way. When he recovered a little from his fright, he saw the rogue elephant crushing something up under its forefeet. Now and again it would stoop and drive its trunks into the mass and begin stamping on it again. This it did for about a quarter of an hour. It then went off in the direction that Dot Kempa had taken. He saw nothing of Dot Kempa after the pad fell off. He waited for 2 hours and, seeing the mad elephant did not come back, he got down and ran to Periapatna and told the Sahib's servants, and they went back with a lot of people and found that the mass the elephant had been crushing under its feet was the bodies of the two officers. The brute must have caught them when they were thrown to the ground and killed them with a blow of its trunk or a crush of the foot, and it had then mangled the two bodies together. They got a cart and brought the bodies away. Simple in all its ghastly details, the tale was enough to make one's blood run cold. But heard as it was, said one present, within a few yards of what that bundle of native blankets contained, it steeled one's heart for revenge. But let us leave this painful narrative and hasten on to the time when the monster met with his deserts at the hand of one of the finest sportsman that ever lived. And that too, in a manner which makes every Britisher feel a pride in his race that can produce such men. Gordon Cumming was a noted shikari, almost as famous in his way as his brother, the celebrated lion slayer of South Africa, and his equally famous sister, the talented artist and explorer of Maori fastnesses in New Zealand. Standing over 6 feet in his stockings and of proportionate breadth of shoulder, he was an athlete in every sense of the word. With his heavy double rifle over his shoulder and with Yalu, his native tracker and shikari, at his heels, he would think nothing of a 20-mile swelter after a wounded bison, even in the hottest weather. An unerring shot, he was known to calmly await the furious onset of a tiger till the brute was within a few yards and then lay it low with a ball crashing through its skull. It is even said that, having tracked a noted man eater to its lair, he disdained to shoot at the sleeping brute, but roused it with a stone and then shot it as it was making at him open mouthed. He was known to decline to take part in baits for game, or to use an elephant to shoot from, but would always go alone, save for his factotum Yalu, and would follow up the most dangerous game on foot. He was a man of few words, and it was with the greatest difficulty he could be got to talk of his adventures. When pressed to relate an incident in which it was known that he had done a deed of the utmost daring, he would dismiss the subject with half a dozen words, generally, "Yes, the beast came at me and I shot him." Yalu was as loquacious as his master was reticent, and it was through his glibness of tongue round the campfire that much of Gordon Cumming's shikar doings became known. Yalu believed absolutely in his master and would follow him anywhere. He carries two deaths in his hand and can place them where he likes, alluding to his master's accuracy with the rifle. Therefore, why should I fear? Has a beast two lives that I should dread him? A single shot is enough, and even a Rakshasa, that is a great demon, would lie low. A deputy commissioner in the Mysore service, Cumming was posted at Shimoga in the northwest of the province when he heard of the doings of bear bucks at Hansur and obtained permission to try and bag him. He soon heard all the khabar, that is, news, as to the habits of the brute, and he determined to systematically stalk him down. For this purpose, he established 3 or 4 small camps at various points in the districts ravaged by the brute, so that he might not be hampered with a camp following him about, but could call in at any of the temporary shelters he had put up and get such refreshments he required. He required. He knew it would be a work of days, perhaps weeks, following up the tracks of the rogue, who was here today and 20 miles off tomorrow. But he had confidence in his own staying powers, and he trusted to the chapter of lucky accidents to cut short a toilsome stalk. Selecting the banks of the Kabani as the most likely place to fall in with the tracks of pierbucks. Tracks were soon found, but these always led to the river, where they were lost, and no further trace of them was found on either bank. He learned from the Kurambas that the elephant was in the habit of entering the river and floating down for a mile or so before it made for the banks. As it traveled during the night and generally laid up in the dense thicket during the day, there was some chance of coming up with it if only the more recent tracks could be followed up uninterruptedly, but with the constant breaks in the scent whenever the animal took to the water, he soon saw that tracking would be useless in such country and that he must shift to where there were no large streams. A couple of weeks had been spent in the arduous work of following up the brute from Karkankote to Fraserpet and back again to the river near Hansur, and then on to Hagara Venkatta. Even the tireless Yalu now became wearied and began to doubt the good fortune of his master. Yet Gordon Cumming was as keen as ever and would not give up his plan of following like a sleuth hound on the tracks of the brute. On several occasions, they had fallen in with other parties out on the same errand as themselves, but these contented themselves with lying in wait at certain points the brute was known to frequent. These parties had invariably asked Gordon Cumming to join them, as they pronounced his stern chase a wild goose one, and said he was as likely to come up with the Flying Dutchman as he was with the terror of Hansur. It was getting well into the third week of this long chase when the tracks led through some scrub jungle which would not give cover to anything larger than a spotted deer. They had come to the ruins of an ancient village, the only signs of which were a small temple fast falling into decay and an enormous banyan tree. It was midday, the heat was intense, and they sat under the shade of the tree for a little rest. Cumming was munching a biscuit while Yalu was chewing a little pan, that is bitter leaf, when a savage scream was heard. And there, not 20 paces off, was the terror of Hansur coming down on them in a terrific charge. From the position in which Cumming was sitting, a fatal shot at the elephant was almost impossible, as it carried its head high and only its chest was exposed. A shot there might rake the body without touching lungs or heart, and then the brute would be on him. Without the least sign of haste, and with the utmost unconcern, Gordon Cumming, still seated, flung his solar topi, that is, sun hat, at the beast when it was about 10 yards from him. The rogue stopped momentarily to examine this strange object and lowered its head for the purpose. This was exactly what Cumming wanted, and quick as thought, a bullet, planted in the center of the prominence, just above the trunk, crashed through its skull, and the terror of Hansur dropped like a stone, shot dead. Ah, comrade, said Yalu, when relating the story, I could have kissed the Bahadur's, that is, my lord's feet, when I saw him put the gun down and go on eating his biscuit, just as if he had only shot a bird of some kind, instead of the devil of an elephant. I was ready to die of fright. Yet here was the Sahib sitting down as if his life had not been in frightful jeopardy just a moment before. Truly, the Sahibs are great. So, guys, this is where I come to the end of my story of Beer Bucks. Hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.